Welcome to the Secure Connections Podcast, a weekly audio and video series brought to you by IoT, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. I'm Brian Sherman, Content Director for IoT, and joining me for today's episode is our friends from IoT Playbook, Joel Zaidspiner and Mark Smith, and otherwise known as Jay-Z too, for those of you who are in the channel.
Yep.
He's infamous, right? Well, both of you guys have a very storied career, which I want to start with that too. But we're planning to discuss the IoT playbook and the opportunities available to MSPs with these innovative technologies. Welcome to the Secure Connections Podcast, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Awesome. And Mark, you have one of the best backgrounds for those of you who are watching the video. And Jay-Z's got you've got a really awesome music one. I'm feeling a little underwhelmed on my own side today, so I'll try to step up better next time. So let's start off with a little more of an introduction. Mark, can you tell us a little about your journey and what led you to choose your current career discussing IoT with the channel?
Right. So I've been in IT for a long time and enjoying my IT career. And then I got this crazy idea to start a magazine back in the mid-90s called Windows NT Magazine. And if your audience remembers that, it was all about Windows NT. And we followed the progress of Microsoft, which at that time had 0% of the enterprise, until by the end of 5 years, they dominated. There's 70% market share. So we followed that. Our focus of Windows NT Magazine was enterprise, and we helped our audience of 1.5 million IT professionals figure out how to deploy Microsoft technologies in their enterprise. And so we did that, and that got me involved, from IT guy into publishing and media. And so one of the things that I teamed up with another media owner, and one of the publications was ChannelPro Network. And so I've been involved with ChannelPro and going to conferences, but really behind the scenes, doing some marketing things and whatnot. Until I heard one of our speakers, Luis Alvarez, talking about, of all things, cannabis, and the cannabis business. So I thought there's something really interesting about what he was saying. And so I followed up, did an interview, and right at the very end, he said, "Oh, by the way, I've practically doubled my managed service revenue with IoT." I'm like, "Wait, what did you just say? How?" He goes, "Well, sorry, I got to go." I'm like, "How could you just leave me hanging?" So we scheduled another appointment, got on there, and he told me the whole story about how he got into it. And that story really, I'm just going to leave it hanging there until you introduce Joel.
Well, you got three of the key things that'll get people's attention: cannabis, IoT, and recurring revenue. So that's a good place to start from. Joel, while I'm sure that 90% plus of our audience has probably met you at some trade show or another over the years, can you tell us a little more about your channel experience?
Well, absolutely, Brian. We've known each other a long time. I've been in the channel 22 years. I started at a competitor publication. I've been with ChannelPro for 12 years. I am the vice president and associate publisher of ChannelPro and IoT Playbook. And it has been a fantastic ride. It is a little crazy right now in the world, as we all know, but we are really excited. I spend every day of my life on the road practically at every single IT event that there's out there, whether it's channel or IoT, which is basically the same. If you look at it, it's a channel IoT world. If we're reading that, those publications and those avenues for where you're going in the IoT, I go to those. Well, now we'll do them online for a while, but up until now, you've seen me there, and I go to every show if possible. And I'm, of course, at the IoT events around the country. I show up there and present for you guys. And the IoT Playbook is a baby that we created some 3 years plus ago, and it was developed through our parent company with some folks together that said, "Hey, there's a need for the IoT," like Mark said earlier, and he'll take it from there. But there's a need for the IoT market for MSPs and IT consultants, and we have it for them, and we have the content. We can show them how to do things.
Very good. And that was one of my questions: is what was the impetus for developing the IoT Playbook? You want to go into that for us, Mark?
Yeah. So What we try to do at ChannelPro is come up with playbooks, if you will, the how-to part of creating managed services with recurring revenue around a specific topic. Could be security, which is extremely hot, right? And with your audience. And with IoT, I was looking for that person that had done it not just once, because I was finding some one-off IoT projects, but here was a guy that sold it 200 times. I'm like, okay, he's figured out the repeatability of it, which is key to creating a playbook, right? And when I say playbook, what do I specifically mean? It means that it addresses, because each of these words have a meaning, like P, it addresses a problem. That if that client doesn't resolve it, they're going to experience a loss, an L, the loss, right? A, there's an avatar, a certain client, it could be a banker, it could be whatever, but that person is solving it. And then tell the story about when someone said yes, that's the why. B is the business model. What's that business model around this recurring offer? And then O, what's the offer you made to the customer? O, what's the offer that particular, what's the behind the scenes of that? For example, which products do I buy to put in that offer? Where can I get those products from, in our market? And then K, the call to action. I know call to action is spelled with a C, but it sounded pretty cool. So that's our playbook, right? So I interview people with that framework. So I'm talking to Lewis, and he said, hey, I was doing this retirement center, and the seniors were complaining like crazy that the internet was going down, right? And, nothing like an angry senior to have the internet go down. And the current tool that he was going to use to run on it, which he was it just wouldn't do it, would not discover the devices that he needed. So in fact, someone recommended, hey, can you run Avik on there to go find these devices? So he did, and he was able to discover and manage the Wi-Fi throughput on there. And while he was at it, he noticed all of these other devices on there. So he sat there with a client looking at a network diagram and saying, oh, who manages this for you? Could be access control. I don't know. What about these surveillance cameras? I'm not sure. What about this? What about that? After about 5 I don't knows, they said, well, would you manage these for us or monitor? He goes, well, yeah, sure. How much? $480. Now, is there any science behind the $480 a month? No. He just pulled it out of his rear end, whatever. But he got that, and he was able to then go teach his people, hey, let's go see if our other clients would want us to monitor all the non-PC stuff. And it sure turns out they did. And next thing you know, they had literally $1 million of recurring revenue on an annual basis. Literally selling a service that once it's set up is super easy to maintain. And by the way, we've got a class called freeiotclass.com where he explains all that in more detail. But anyway, from there, he had some clients who, banking clients, who they because of FINRA regulations, and by the way, this is a key tip for anything in IoT. The fastest way to sell something in IoT is when it's associated with a regulation.
Good point.
Okay? Because you can help your client fulfill that regulation. That is by far the thing. And they can't ignore the problem, right? They can't blow you off and say, I'll worry about that later. No, it's a regulation. I have to say, well, one of the regulations, FINRA said, you can't have anything on the network. You have to lock that network down. And if some new device tries to attach, you have to be able to not allow that on or allow it on, but a human being is involved, okay? Well, he didn't have it. There was some super expensive tools to do it, but he found another tool called Domos that did it. So he put this box on there. It notifies his people, and they can call the client and say, hey, somebody's trying to add a new laptop in your boardroom. Are you okay with that? And he said, well, yeah, that's the auditor. Let them on. He clicks a button, and now they're on. Okay, so that became, but guess what? Because it had that extra little real time, he could charge $1,250 a month. So just think about it. He went from $480 to $1,250.
Yeah.
And now with his cannabis clients, I started with cannabis. They had a problem. You have to have a camera literally covering everything from seed to sale 100% of the time, 24/7, and with 90 days of stored video.
Wow,
But
that's a
here's
lot
the
of
problem.
data.
That's a lot of cameras, though, right? And the regulation says if one of those cameras goes down, you have to notify us within 6 hours. And if you don't, you could lose your permit, meaning basically shut your business down. So camera management's a big deal. Well, it turns out this other box that he had, no one's allowed him to do that. To literally get every single day, write a script that would look at all 300 cameras and say, yep, they're on, pointed in the right direction. And for that, he could charge $2,400 a month. So now we have these 3 services that are generating well over 7 figures of revenue. And once they're set up, they're pretty much a set it and forget it kind of a business, okay? That became, and you think, well, you've got 3 businesses. Well, it's turned out that became the beginning where he's now been able, with some clients, to increase his revenue tenfold, 10x. And I'm not making, that's not a hyperbole, it literally is it. And here's why. He's in Salinas, California, bunch of ag clients. He did all their IT work. Now he would look out in the field of, like, one of his clients that is the world's largest orchid grower at 60 football field size greenhouses. And you know what he did with those? Nothing, right? That's not part of IT. You're growing a bunch of flowers. What does that have to do with IT? He ignored all that stuff until he finally got an opportunity to bid on one of them. And now they pull him in. Now he's literally with the ag clients. They're pulling him in with their line of business work because IT is seen as a cost. Growing flowers is revenue. And when you get hanging with revenue, it's a whole different conversation. I can help you increase revenue by increasing yields, by doubling the number of flowers and stuff. All that's dealing with IoT. So IoT is the perfect avenue to get you into line of business work that you might have been shut out of before.
Certainly, and I know many people don't think of farming as high tech, although that has changed tremendously over the years. So those that know, HTG and Arlen have gotten an earful of really good opportunities of using, GPS technologies and others. But I've heard. I'm trying to remember the cannabis opportunities seem to be, I don't want to say growing exponentially,
right?
But obviously they're doing very well. What are some of the other applications that you're seeing, especially the SMB side, and the cannabis industry? Honestly, is a good SMB business because they don't employ a tremendous amount of people, but it's still very technology laden.
So schools. So one of our episodes was on a guy who sold a $12 million deal to a school district, and it was all about access control. But what's key is going from, because you could take something that seems ordinary, a security camera, right, where you're pointing at something to, for physical access. You add AI to it, and now it's magic. It goes from ordinary to extraordinary. Why? Because the school district, because of active shooters and stuff, now required facial recognition. And literally, so now 24/7, any time of day, only authorized people can now enter the building, whether you have a badge or not. Okay. So what happens, you take your camera plus your AI, and it goes into an IoT platform. Because another thing that's happened in the schools is that, starting with higher ed, like universities, there was a thing called the Clery Act, another regulation. That regulation said, when we have a situation like an active shooter or some other environment, every piece of communication equipment, from the clock on the wall to the alarms to every email, everything has to be unified and tied together. So all of a sudden now, all these disparate systems that everybody had, all of a sudden they had to throw them away and get systems that all communicated from a center. It's one button panic system. Well, now the K through 12 is now adopting that on a state-by-state basis, so that they can tie all their systems together. So if something bad's happening, push a button, lock the school down, communicate with everybody that needs to be communicated instantaneously. You're saying there was another one that moved from there to the hotels. There's a new regulation. Okay, it is the Hotel Safety Worker Act, started January 1st. Any hotel that has X amount of rooms or more is now required to have a one-button panic deal. So think of all these hotel workers wearing something that looks like a life alert, okay? And they press a button, and immediately all the security systems are alerted to where that person is. Let's say that a hotel guest is getting too aggressive with a hotel worker, right? She can press a button, boom, they all show up there. So now those are a requirement across, and the fines, by the way, go up to $75,000 per day per incident if you don't have it. And there are solutions. We did a whole episode with My Devices has a whole prepackaged solution for that, as well as Cinex and another company. So these are prepackaged solutions that you can sell based on a regulation.
Gotcha. And some of the other, I mean, there's a host of opportunities in addition to delivering the actual solution is the support side. You mentioned securing, looking at all the connecting all the endpoints, but you also need to make sure all of those are secured. We've heard numerous issues as far as security breaches and things that are happening if it's not properly protected. And then you also have all the data that's coming in too, being able to help manage the data. What do you think are some of the most I don't say easy, but what's the progression you think for an MSP to come in and be able to manage all those different solution aspects and support?
So if you're an existing MSP, there are two solutions that you can add pretty easily. Okay. One is Nodeware on the security side. So we had an episode with Josh Lieberman, one of our favorite speakers at ChannelPro. And Josh, we did an episode talking about what he's now adding a Nodeware box to every one of his installations. What it does is it scans for all of the devices, including all the IoT devices, finds their firmware, compares it against a vulnerability database, okay, and then ranks them on a scorecard of green, like, hey, it's in compliance, yellow, like, you need to look at this, red, meaning it's completely, like, you need to get this device off or update the firmware or replaced, okay? So that's one thing you can add immediately. We have a whole episode on that. And then Domos is another one that you can add immediately. It's $19 a month, and it will scan everything, find every device, including the stuff behind gateways that your other RMM tools are simply just not going to find. What it shows up in an RMM tool is there's an IP address and it puts a question mark. And what most of your audience does today is they look at those question marks and ignore them. But behind those question marks is a potential to make another 7 figures, okay? So don't ignore the question marks. It turns out that they are legit devices, and what we're finding now is that there are more IoT devices than non-IoT, meaning more than just laptops and whatnot. So everybody thinks, well, we're moving everything to the cloud, right? And all your hardware worries are over. Guess what? Hardware's coming back. It's all coming back, and you got to manage that and keep it in compliance and everything else. So, yeah.
I mean, just looking around, we did an assessment of our church a couple weeks ago. Walked around with the trustees, and we looked at all of the various endpoints. And it's not a high tech building. We're moving that direction, but I think there was 48 different IP addresses when we figured out exactly what it was, and that's a small. That's just creeped in. It's over the last few years, they add a few things here and there, and it doesn't take long. Imagine some of these larger businesses are, 10 times that easily.
Well, in fact, the next episode coming up was featuring, so we had this guy, Corey. Yep. So Corey made the cover of our issue, and it was all about IoT. So one of his 2 main clients are megachurches, right? So, the megachurch area has millions of dollars in some case of AV equipment, plus they got a big building with lots of HVAC and other things. So what he decided to do, rather than typically what an IT guy is, they just do the IT and they sort of ignore the AV and they ignore the facilities. He decided to centrally manage that for his clients. And now he's doing literally energy as a service, AV as a service.
Certainly.
And once he got into all the AV, it's all IP based. It is all IT stuff, right? It is all, so now it's like tons of these IoT devices. Literally all the lights that you see in the AV stuff, they're all individually addressable. So if you don't deal with those, you're now allowing all this stuff on your network that opens itself up to security issues. And but anyway, yeah. So yeah, we have an episode coming up about that very specific thing about how to, facilities, Navy in a church setting has really expanded his business dramatically.
Yeah, even in the kitchens, the freezers and refrigerators are now on. They have management mode, so they let them know when the temperature's dropping down. So it's really interesting, but at the same point, yeah, we wonder how well they're protected. They weren't in this case, so we're addressing that.
And I think it's important for your audience to know that if they're telling their clients they're secure, but they're not securing their IoT, they're not really secure.
Exactly.
Right. And the other thing too is the new NIST requirements, which a lot of people are standardizing to. The NIST is a cybersecurity framework done by the federal government. It now has a component where it requires physical security as well as cybersecurity. So you could say, well, hey, I got it cybersecure figured out, but you don't have the physical security nailed down. You're actually now falling out of NIST compliance.
So it's a lot of variables.
Right. And we, given all of it's just more opportunity really for the MSP. Okay. Just to be aware of these things and do it. Turns out that there are plenty of players out there to help you do this kind of thing, including what's going on right now with, the coronavirus and all the, I just had a conversation with Luis Alvarez, and the number of his business is booming as he's enabling every one of his clients now wants their workers working from home, right? But he said, I'll do that. I'll set up all your workers, but they got to have my MSSP stack in it, as if they were inside the building. So now what he's now moved out, he's got his full MSSP stack, brand new laptops for all these people, brand new firewalls, brand new routers, and including even now beginning to add IoT management at the home level.
And it's a smart way of doing it.
Right.
Make sure it's done the right way from the beginning.
Right.
That's why I think a lot of MSPs are struggling right now because, well, they're also limited by, budgets in many cases that some of the businesses have. But when they can do it green space, it's a fantastic opportunity to put it in the right way and manage it. Yeah, Joel?
A lot of partners are surprised how low price some of this stuff is to actually implement it. It's all low cost prices for a lot of the products that are out there. So a lot of solution providers and MSPs can get right into the IoT space very quickly, very easily with some of the software and some of the products that Mark had just mentioned. Some of those brands, they are very, very affordable and they're very easy to get into.
Awesome.
Absolutely, yeah.
To go back to, because you had mentioned compliance is a really good way to get into IoT. How much does the data being collected factor into the compliance side of it, Mark? That seems to be one of the most concerning things for some of the MSPs I've talked about.
So a lot of that is a problem, right? So you cannot count on particular IoT platforms securing that. Now, some of the ones we've covered, that is a question I ask as a matter of fact, right? I just always ask that. And so they will deal with that. So if they've got a gateway with sensors, they will make sure that they, encrypt the data coming from here to the gateway and from the gateway back up to the cloud. So that's a pretty common thing to do, okay? And because some of these configurations, let's take security cameras. You may have a scenario where, so talk about data, especially when you're marrying that with AI for facial recognition, that's a big deal, right? So some of these schools will say, listen, I know this is an IP camera, but I do not want that camera to be able to communicate directly to the cloud. However, I know you need to manage it remotely. Okay, so again, with one of these tools like he was talking about, low-cost Domos, $19, you can configure that camera so it cannot communicate to the cloud. It can only communicate through the Domos box. The Domos box then has an encrypted encryption to the cloud, and it also has a built-in VPN on there, so you can encrypted tunnel to manage that Domos box and then further manage the cameras. So that's, you can configure these things, but you got to watch out, because out of the box, that camera will communicate directly to the cloud. So it does require some smarts to be able to configure it correctly. I could tell you that the people that have used Nodeware and Domos, when they first get out there and scan for IoT devices, they find about 80% of the devices are unsecured because they were set up by someone who really didn't know cybersecurity. So they went there, they got them hooked up like an HVAC system. It's on the wire. Yep, it works. And they're out of there. And like, oh yeah, but, left a default password in or did some stuff like that.
Yeah. So it needs to be properly configured and set up when.
That's correct.
Yeah. A lot of the out-of-the-box stuff, there's additional steps that should be taken and often don't. But that's fantastic information. It sounds like there's a tremendous opportunity in IoT. Let's take a step back because before we run out of time today, I want to go into if I'm an MSP and I want to learn more, I can go on to it's IoTplaybook.com.
Correct.
What do they need to know about your website and the playbook itself? What resources are available?
So there's a lot of different parts of the site, and if you go right to the homepage, you'll find at the top of the page an area to register for the page, and you can register to get emails throughout the month. We'll be sending emails out. We have well over 45,000 subscribers already, and we look to grow that continuously. And it has information about best practices. Just like ChannelPro, for those that have been readers of ChannelPro all these years, we're best practices. And the playbook just expands onto the area of best practices for the IoT space. Mark has been doing a great job of working with many of the vendors in the space and helping the readers understand how to install, how to create, and how to use IoT in their day-to-day practice.
So it's very similar to ChannelPro. You're providing resources and a look at both the vendor side as well as the real life stories from MSPs who are building the solution.
With a lot of how-tos, as well.
Awesome.
And there's going to be a online summit for a lot of the readers if they want to join in. And Mark will be hosting it on March 20. We'll be one of the hosts. We'll be hosting March 25th. IoT Playbook is doing an online summit on March 25th. So they can register as well for that. They can register either on the IoT Playbook site or on the ChannelPro Network site. And then we're going to have a live event, if God willing, we can do it. July 7th, we're going to be doing a live event in Raleigh, North Carolina, for those that want to come out as well.
Awesome. And they can register for that as well on the site?
Yeah. Absolutely. And Mark has been doing dozens and dozens of podcasts and webcasts and webinars for our audience, and it's just filled with information that I don't know anybody as knowledgeable in the IoT space as Mark Smith is. So he's a great resource for all of us.
Fantastic. And Joel, you mentioned at the beginning is IoT Playbook is a proud sponsor with IOTA. So we see you at the IOTA events too, and everything be willing that we will see you in Detroit in May is our next live event too. So it's always worthwhile. It's great to see when you come and talk about the IoT opportunities as well, because the audience is of MSP.
And I'm being there.
Interested. Yeah, let's hope we're both there at this point.
I looked at my calendar and I have a lot of travel plans that have been canceled for the next month and a half, 2 months, but we're hoping that things get better and that we're all able to travel soon enough. And for me, being in the house, I'm peeling wallpaper off the walls, it seems like, and I don't even have wallpaper. So it's hard for me to stay home. I've done a lot of cooking.
I believe with the coronavirus, that's a very serious topic, and we've got to, hopefully everybody's in a safe place, and we hope things turn out well. But it's a good time while everybody's on pause right now to come in and sign up for the IoT Playbook and look at the resources you guys have available. Check back in the podcast, I would assume, is in an archive as well, so they can go back and listen to those.
Yeah, you can see the archive at podcast.iotplaybook.com. Or in your favorite podcast app, you just type in IoT Playbook, it'll come up and you can see all the archive issues. I think the online summit, what I try to do with that is take somebody who's brand new to IoT and literally walk them through the progression of even how to put together the perfect offer. Based on talking to dozens of people, I've sort of figured out the common pattern between the guys who are really successful at it. And I literally break it down to 6 things and break them all down. And I also unveil in there too that not only do I kind of, report on it, but I've actually started my own IoT managed service as well in the oil and gas business. So I'm jumping in as well. So these are the actual playbooks for putting together your own offer, whether you're just getting started. Again, we give even ways of getting started like immediately, like you could get started in a couple of days all the way to some more complex offers, that take a little bit longer to get going on.
So you're creating the scripts, or at least illustrating the scripts that are available to be successful in IoT. I think that's fantastic.
Yep.
Before we go today, time goes too quick for us here when we're on the Secure Connections podcast. But do you have any final thoughts? Why don't I start with you, Mark? You'd like to share with the audience before we sign off today?
Yeah, I think IoT, look, if maybe some of you feel like, man, I've learned just everything I wanted to learn about IT. Well, I can just tell you, just pick the wrong career because it always is evolving. But I'm telling you, IoT is the absolute key to increasing your revenue with your current clients. If you can, because it is a pathway to get into their line of business, getting into the revenue side of their business. So that's on the plus side there too. And also it is something that as a security focus, you need to be aware of, because it's going to come, if they get hacked through their security cameras, they don't really care that you said, oh, I don't support your security cameras. You're their IT and security guy. That's your responsibility. But we're trying to make it super easy for you to get in, learn from people who are doing it. And I'll even tell you my secret formula here for IoT Playbook. It's called one word FOMO, the fear of missing out. I'm just going to tell you one successful guy after another who's making money. So by the time you're done listening, you're like, wait, I'm the only guy left who's not making money with IoT, right? And that's what we try to do, because it's happening. It's time to get in now while it's early, so you can pick up the best opportunities.
And Mark, it seems like one of those areas, one of those tech solution areas where you can create really good stickiness with your clients as well.
Yeah, these guys who've got in on there, they're not going anywhere. They are planted in for sure.
Love to hear that these days. How about yourself, Joel? Any final comments before we sign up?
Absolutely. If you're not a member or reading IoTplaybook.com yet, you go on, you can register for free. There's no charge. It's lots of content, lots of information. We'll send you information whenever we have some new stuff to share with you. And then meet us over at the IoT events. When you're on the road, come and see ChannelPro when you're an IoT Playbook. When you're at the events, we'll be there. Our plan is to be there at every show this year. And if you have time, March 25th, show up to our live event, our online event, which will be online March 25th. Just go on the website and register. You can actually go to events.channelpronetwork.com, which is the best place to go right on and register. And you'll be able to register for the event and come to that. And if you're in the Raleigh area, come to the one in Raleigh that's live on July 7th. So great speaking with you, Brian. Always a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you face to face soon enough.
I certainly hope so, Joe. So on behalf of IOTA, I sincerely thank Mark Smith and JC from IoT Playbook. You guys are great partners to work with from IOTA's perspective, but also just fun to chat with as well, and a great insightful discussion today. So thank you. We also we appreciate all of our listeners as well, and encourage you to tune into the next episode of the Secure Connections podcast. We wish you all a safe and very secure day.
Thanks.
Thanks.